Inspired by true events, SAS Rogue Heroes is a dramatised account of how the Special Air Service was formed during World War II.
The SAS is a blank page, and it is our job to fill it. Why do you want to fight in the desert, Dave?
Well, I just love killing fascists, sir.
How did this group of elite soldiers come to be?
What should we call ourselves?
And who were these very real Rogue Heroes? I'm Theo Barkland-Biggs, and I play Reg Seekings in the series. And this is the story of the real SAS.
Men who refuse to stand down.
The SAS, a special forces unit of the British Army and one of the most fearsome fighting forces in the world, began life in 1941 in North Africa during the Second World War.
I understand you gentlemen are very good at killing people?
You heard right.
Convinced that traditional commando units weren't entirely effective, a bold young lieutenant came up with a radical plan that would change the course of modern warfare.
This is war work, and we have a license to behave badly.
That man was Lieutenant David Stirling of the Scots Guards.
There was no way that anybody was going to back the scheme, except possibly at the very top.
The new motto is, who dares wins.
Archibald David Stirling was born into one of the oldest and grandest aristocratic clans in Scotland.
Both you and General Auchinleck used to shoot on my father's estate. My father was Archibald Stirling. My mother Margaret used to make her own gin and do bird impressions. She was very good at howls.
A rebellious young man.
Men tried to more or less ignore the normal rules and regulations.
I've just got back from a deep desert patrol, and I am mad as fuck.
Fond of drinking and gambling.
Whiskey! I won!
He was thrown out of Cambridge University after only a year. When World War II broke out, he immediately enlisted in the Scots Guards as a lieutenant and began a distinguished, yet shall we say unconventional military career.
I was still an aeroplane.
Keen to get involved in the action, Stirling joined Britain's new raiding and reconnaissance force, known as the Commandos. In early 1941, he was dispatched to the Middle East as part of the commando group known as Lay Force. Characterized by his superiors as lazy and insubordinate.
Stirling, what would it take to make you call me sir?
It would take respect.
The giant sloth, as he would be referred to, became frustrated with army life. From his frustration came the germ of an idea.
I am a long shot. A shot in the dark, but at least I am a shot.
For small teams of parachute-trained soldiers to operate behind enemy lines, gain intelligence, destroy enemy aircraft, and attack their supply and reinforcement routes.
Someone said, well, where's the camp? And David said, well, that's the first job you do, is to steal one.
What we had was chaps who came from all walks of life. And there was short ones, tall ones, medium height, and we had to blend all that into a fighting body.
The man many underestimated and dismissed as a sloth was soon to become the stuff of legend, the ghostly phantom major of the SAS. And who would he recruit to his unit to execute his outlandish plan? Only the toughest, bravest, and brightest soldiers were chosen. Lieutenant Robert Blair Paddy Mayne, regarded now as a truly legendary figure in the history of the Special Forces. Born in 1915 in Newtownards, Northern Ireland, into a prosperous family,
Paddy, who was a man that if you walked behind, you had no fear at all. If you were with Paddy Mayne, there was no fear at all.
Paddy was very, very different.
Paddy was one of 7 siblings, a remarkable, gifted all-round sportsman. Boxing, golf, and most notably rugby, he represented Ireland in the British Lions. A complex and enigmatic character, deeply literate with a great intellect.
You are a poet.
As a matter of fact, I am.
And a capacity to produce heroics on the battlefield and damage to those off it. He had a thirst for adventure, and like Stirling, he ended up volunteering for the Commandos. After the Battle of Litany River in June 1941, Mayne was mentioned in dispatches for the impressive way he had commanded his troop, achieving his objectives and bringing back a large clutch of prisoners. Actions that brought him to the attention of recruiting officers like David Stirling.
You are the first commanding officer and I've ever actually liked.
It certainly ruffled a lot of feathers.
As depicted in the series, Mayne was said to have been recruited into the SAS from a prison cell, from which he was awaiting court-martial for striking his commanding officer.
But I tell him that very firmly this commanding officer wasn't for hitting.
Whatever the truth of this story, Mayne proved to be an ideal candidate for the Rogue Heroes.
Finally, I feel at home.
Next up, John Steele Lewis. Lieutenant Jock Lewis was the co-founder of the SAS and played a vital role in establishing the unit. Raised in Australia, he enjoyed a rugged outdoor lifestyle, and his nickname Jock was earned for his sporting endeavours at university, where his prowess led him to being elected as president of the Oxford University Boat Club. Although very different in character to both Sterling and Paddy,
Gentlemen, this is a theatre of war, not a playground.
Jock was equally eager for action.
Remember this. When we are among them, your mother is not watching.
He improvised all kinds of new training techniques.
He says, never run away. He says, because once you start running, you stop thinking. It was very sound advice.
He sought to refine the commando concept and develop a more effective way of using these highly trained soldiers. Lewis became the unit's training officer and established a grueling program, including physical exercise, parachute training, desert survival, navigation, first aid, observation, and demolitions. Some of these methods were dangerous and experimental, like practicing parachute jumps by leaping from the back of speeding lorries. Another of Lewis's vital contributions was the development of a new kind of bomb, combining both high explosive and incendiary elements, ideal for destruction of aircraft and vehicles. His creation was a real game changer.
Jock had mixed up a mixture of plastic, thermite, and steel filings. That was the secret, steel filings. And of course, the thing blew up.
Through this intense training program, innovation, and inspired leadership, Jock Lewis imbued the fledgling SAS with the ethos and high standards that are his hallmarks today. Eve, played by Sophia Bouteille, is the deputy head of French military intelligence in Cairo.
I share your impatience for the conduct of the war, and I intend to do something about it.
Unlike Sterling, Paddy, Mayne, and Jock Lewis, the character of Eve depicted in SAS Rogue Heroes is not based on an actual historical person, but rather is an imagined character created from the historical accounts of various different spies at that time.
Are you Colonel Dudley Wrangle Clark?
At your service.
Her counterpart in military deception, Lieutenant Colonel Dudley Clark, played by Dominic West, was on the other hand, very real. His introduction to the series, although seemingly far-fetched, was in fact based on the infamous photograph of Dudley Clark wearing a dress which circulated among the Allied High Command in late 1941.
And this is the Cairo headquarters of British Secret Intelligence Middle East.
Clark's ideas for combining fictional orders of battle, visual deception, and double agents helped define Allied deception strategy during the war, for which he has been referred to as the greatest British deceiver of World War II.
Colonel Clark, you seem to have invented an entire British regiment.
Yes, from thin air.
Many others contributed to the inception of the SAS, and we've only scratched the surface of this astonishing story. But one thing is for certain, this band of rogue heroes had a truly remarkable impact on the course of history. Series 2 returns to action with the troops in spring 1943. Paddy takes control of the SAS following Sterling's capture, and now attention must turn from the conflict in North Africa to mainland Europe. Join the regiment as they face their next battle on a whole new terrain. SAS Rogue Heroes, Series 2.